We'll now hear from Ibrahima Sheikh Diong, who is the United Nations Assistant Secretary General and Director General of the African Risk Capacity Group, who's joining us virtually. Just wait one moment.
Well,
hello,
thank
Mr.
you.
Diong. It's great to see you. Mr.
Thank
Diong,
you.
many of your members across the continent of Africa are particularly exposed and vulnerable to weather and climate hazards. Could you tell us, how is the Africa Risk Capacity reducing and managing these adverse weather and climate-related impacts?
Well, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Let me begin by thanking the OECD and congratulating them for the report. One thing that caught my attention in particular is the holistic approach to dealing with the impact that came from climate change, because we believe that's the only way we can take into account the policies, the regulatory framework, but also the ecosystem of disaster in our countries. I also like to congratulate BMZ, the German, for hosting us. Let me bring in what I call the African perspective, because my organization was created by the African Union, entirely dedicated to making sure that we can deal with the impact of climate change, loss and damages, so we can protect vulnerable communities across Africa. Let me highlight a few points which I think are extremely important, just to underscore what has been said in the report as things that we need to spend more time and energy in making sure we can reduce the impact of climate change on the continent. I think number one, it is extremely critical that we spend resources and time and energy in building the early warning system of African countries and the risk profiling capabilities, allowing government to be able to actually make informed decisions about what to do with the risk before it actually occurs. This is extremely critical, because if you wait till it happens, it may be too late. So therefore, it's important that we actually strengthen the capabilities of African countries in order to build this early warning system so that the decision can be made in an informed manner. We underscore the importance of actually investing more resources in climate-related technologies so that we can actually equip these developing countries with the capabilities in profiling risk. This is extremely critical in our response, in our view, and is also shown in the way we work with our member states. I think the second action, this is extremely critical, and that's the building what we call contingency planning. It is true in many countries in Africa or developing world, in addition to what we do, there are lots of humanitarian agencies that are intervening when disaster occurs to save some lives. The government themselves are also coming up with contingency planning. We believe what needs to be done in making sure that in each of these countries, we build a sustainable contingency planning mechanism whereby before actually disaster occurs, at least loss and damages, we have a system in place whereby countries can actually react and intervene in an organized fashion. So I believe we also need to spend resources on time and energy in building the capacity of African countries so they can have solid and sustainable contingency planning where necessary. I think the third thing I want to highlight, and I think the report has mentioned it, is the response. They can come in different forms, but they have only one objective and one alone, and that is to protect the life and livelihood of the people who are affected by the climate change. In our case, we believe to risk transfer of the risk to the insurance market allows African government to have access to speedy resources in the way that the first response is actually funded to the payer that came out from the insurance sort of scheme. But in addition to that, I like the fact that in the report, they also highlighted other social safety net mechanism that can be combined with resources that came from the insurance, so that together we can actually have a firepower that allows African government to basically support the people that are affected by the climate change or by the disaster came from flooding, from drought, and other disasters as well. Let me finish up by mentioning 2 points, which I think are extremely critical. And that is to say, in our case, it's important that not only we provide additional resources to support the premium financing so we can make them affordable, accessible, and available to African governments, but it's important that premium financing is linked to impact. So we have to be able to demonstrate to monitoring and evaluation on the ground that the money is being paid out goes to the people that need them so we can save lives. So therefore, we need to strengthen our monitoring and evaluation system whereby we can demonstrate this has an impact on the communities on the ground. It's important also we collect what we call the stories of the communities that are affected, whose lives are being saved, so we can make the case that in the long run, the resources that will be mobilized in Glasgow would lead to saving many lives across Africa. Let me finish up by saying this. We can do 3 things at the same time. We can make Africa to be more resilient while we're investing in adaptation and mitigation. And I believe that's the way it should be done, so that in the long run, we're building the ecosystem in most developing countries whereby they will then have their own resources, their own capabilities to be able to actually address the impact of climate change in their countries, save lives, so we can continue to actually work for the community and so on. So thank you very much on the note, and I look forward to reading every single word of the report and see how we can make it relevant to the African continent as well. Thank you.